Like Travis said, my name is Luke. Grew up in College Station, Texas. So, know what it's like to grow up in a college town like this. So, good stuff. All right, so before we start, someone tell me something that y'all learned about Joseph. Something that stood out. If you answer, you can have some. Anybody at all.
Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yes.
His compassion for his brothers, even though he sold him into slavery.
There you go. Compassion for his brothers, almost, even though he sold him into slavery.
He trusted in God's plan, even though he went through rough times.
Yeah, that's real good. Trusting in God's plan, even though he went through hard times. All right, Moses.
He led like a billion people across the land with help from God and Jesus. And all
That is true, yes. One more thing from Moses.
He
Yes.
lived with vision and
led-
purpose.
We'll get back.
I don't know what he said, but he led 2 million guys across the Red Sea.
Millions, yes. And
He led with vision and purpose.
there you go.
There you go.
Way to steal the answer. I'll give you some. Yeah, I got plenty. All right, so started out with those two guys. Like Travis said, we're going to start with Ruth tonight. So everyone has a piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to spend the majority of the time going through the story of Ruth. And as I'm going through the story of Ruth, what I want you to do, chapter by chapter, is draw out the story of Ruth on that piece of paper. So as I tell the story, you're going to draw it out. So maybe as I'm talking about people, you draw stick figures. And if I say they move somewhere, an arrow to a different land, something like that. Be creative. Guys, don't be afraid to be creative. It really helps out. I know when I do this, I remember it a lot better. Just the overall story. Whenever I do remember stuff like this. That couch has Velcro on it.
It's also a medium desk.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to get started with Ruth. There's 4 chapters in the book of Ruth. So I'm going to go through chapter by chapter, and you all draw out the story. All right? So starting out, we got the main characters in Ruth. First off, we're setting up in the land of Israel. All right? Now, Israel is where the people of God live. So we saw, like y'all talked about with Moses, Moses led God's people out of Egypt into the wilderness, and then eventually God's people went in to the land of Israel, which is where we are now. All right. So the main characters, starting out, we have Naomi, who is one of the main characters in the story. We have her husband, whose name does not matter because he doesn't last long, and then her 2 sons. Their 2 sons. All right. So there's a family of 4. Now, during this time in Israel, there was a famine in the land. Who knows what a famine is? Everyone should know what a famine is.
No food, no water.
No food, no water. Farming isn't good, so shortage of food, right? So there's a famine in the land. This family decides to go to a different country. So they go to Moab from Israel. So this family of 4 moves to Moab. While they're in Moab, the 2 sons find Moabite women to marry. One of the women's name is Orpah, kind of like Oprah, but Orpah. Weird, I don't know. And then the other woman is Ruth. All right. So Ruth, obviously the namesake of this book. So what do we know about Ruth? She is not an Israelite, correct? She is a Moabite, so she is not part of God's people. So we have Naomi and her husband, her 2 sons, and her 2 sons have married, right? So while they are in Moab, Naomi's husband and her 2 sons die. So we are left with Naomi and her 2 daughter-in-laws. All right, everyone keeping up with this? So the cast of characters now includes Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth. The 3 men have died. All right? During this time, the famine in Israel is over, and Naomi decides that she is going to move back to Israel. Okay? So Orpah and Ruth decide they are going to go with Naomi back to Israel, even though that is not the land where they came from. Now this, we see there, during this time, the loyalty of Ruth, right? We see that she is willing to leave her home country to go to a country she knows nothing about, to a people she knows nothing about, to a culture she knows nothing about, in order to stay loyal to Naomi, right? As they go, Naomi tries to convince the 2 women not to go. She tells them to go back to the place, to their hometown, basically. Go back to your homeland. But these women decide they're going to be faithful to Naomi, give up their comforts to go with her, to serve her. At one point, Ruth tells Naomi, "Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me." So right there, we see the faithfulness and the loyalty of Ruth to her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi kind of stops fighting Ruth to keep her from, or to try to get her to go home. So Ruth stays with Naomi, but Orpah goes back. All right? So that's chapter 1. So the cast of characters starts out with a family of 4, and now we're left with what? 2. Who is it?
Ruth and Naomi.
Good. Ruth and Naomi. So that's chapter 1. All right? So going on, let me see y'all's pieces of paper. How are y'all doing? Fun. Good job. There you go, guys. Nice. All right, so now going on to chapter 2. So, cast of characters now includes Ruth and Naomi. So starting out, we see Ruth caring for Naomi, and the way that she cares for her is by going and gathering food for the 2 of them. All right, so here you have 2 women, no husbands. During this culture, the husband always takes care of the family. They don't have that. And so Ruth goes out during the time of harvest. She goes behind the men in the fields and basically picks up the leftovers that they drop. All right, and that's what she uses to feed Naomi and herself. She is doing this in the field of a man named Boaz. All right, Boaz. That's another important character we see in this story. So make sure you draw Boaz. Maybe he had a mustache or something. I think he had one. So Boaz, he's a man of God, and he blesses his workers. And he noticed that Ruth has been gleaning in his fields. He notices her because of her hard work. He notices the way that she is caring for Naomi, and he notices her good reputation in the community. So Boaz tells his workers to leave more behind, basically, in order to bless Ruth, because he notices her dedication, her loyalty, and her hard work. At one point, Ruth goes to Boaz in chapter 2, and she says, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" And this is a really important part of the story here, as we see Ruth not expecting favor from Boaz because of her hard work. She doesn't go in expecting to be blessed because of the way that she is working, but rather she is a hard worker trying to please the Lord and trying to take care of her mother-in-law. And as we saw before, Boaz tells her it's because of her faithfulness to Naomi and for her servant's heart, and that's why he has noticed her. So Boaz tells Ruth May the Lord reward your work and your wages be full from the Lord, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. So Boaz notices her. He notices her faithfulness, her hard work, and basically asks the Lord on her behalf to bless her. Ruth then goes to Naomi. She has found favor in the eyes of Boaz, right? So she goes back to Naomi, really excited, and tells her all that has happened with Boaz. So as Ruth is telling Naomi, her mother-in-law, this, Naomi reveals to Ruth something that's really important. She reveals to Ruth that Boaz, this man whose field she's been working, is what is called a kinsman redeemer. All right? Now, kinsman redeemer in that time was a relative who takes responsibility of a person in need. All right? So, Boaz is a kinsman to Naomi's husband, husband that has passed away, and it is his responsibility as a relative to take care of that family. And what that usually means is taking the widow as his wife. So in this case, it would be Ruth. So that is his responsibility as a kinsman redeemer. All right? So that's the end of chapter 2. So really, chapter 2, what really you need to remember is this is the beginning when Ruth meets Boaz, and that Boaz is Ruth's kinsman redeemer. All right? That's what you need to remember.